I bring all those joys to mind and all the joys and concerns that remain in the silence of our hearts. May those who have joys share them with those among us. May those who have concerns be comforted and supported by our community. Blessed be. Having too much fun with this song. A few years ago, my husband Scott and I were moving, a stressful time. And I started to think about how we as a couple handle those tough times. I was curious about how others cope and sustain their relationships. And I decided to investigate. So I interviewed a variety of people, talking with couples of all ages throughout the United States, and with couples from newlyweds to those who have been married for decades. I talked with gay, lesbian, bisexual, and heterosexual couples. As we chatted and laughed together, my own biases and stereotypes were constantly challenged by the answers these different couples gave. And you might be surprised by which couple said what. I discovered common threads and gained a deeper appreciation for my own marriage. As Unitarian Universalists, our living tradition draws from many sources, which includes direct experience. These couples' experiences are a direct source of wisdom, filled with inspiration and sacredness. Notice how you relate to this sample of their insights based on 4 questions I asked and presented by my readers today, Summer, Joyce, and Peter. My first question is, when did you know you wanted to get married and not just be in relationship with each other?
I knew she was the love of my life when I looked into her eyes.
I knew the night I met him. This guy asked me to dance. The thought went through my mind, I'm going to marry him.
It was progressive, just very natural and organic, and he had been dropping hints for a while. I feel more and more in love every day. We were engaged before we lived together.
She was more interested in getting married than me. The wedding was about community recognition and an official way to declare, I'm not going to cut and run.
We already knew we were going to spend our lives together. We just wanted to throw a great party for our friends and family.
Our idea of making a life together was separate from our idea to get married. We had already decided to be together. Marriage was a practical option to get legal protections.
When we moved in together, we committed our lives to each other. Marriage was a public act to applaud our relationship and include our son.
I've been begging my partner to make an honest woman out of me. I think I wore him down.
I didn't want to live together indefinitely without getting married. As my dad would say, fish or cut bait.
The second question was there a change after the wedding? Did it feel any different?
Nah, it was just the same.
No, not really. It's been an evolution. I felt a bigger change when we moved or had tough times. It was a step, but the steps that came later are more important.
He told me that it was like concrete after the wedding. After I gasped in shock, he explained that it was a good thing, that it felt solid, like we had a good foundation now.
Her family suddenly knew how to categorize us and started introducing me as their daughter-in-law.
Calling someone your wife was heavy, but in a good way. Clarity came, and commitment to building this new life.
How do you handle the difficult times?
We go for a walk or a drive in the car, so it's easier to talk about the hard things.
We really know how to press each other's buttons. But I also know not to touch her when she's upset.
When we are going to talk about stressful things like doing taxes, we break it down and talk about small parts instead of everything at once, so it doesn't get overwhelming. We reward ourselves like getting takeout food.
I tend to yell, and my spouse was raised in a home that didn't do that. I have to remember that we were raised with different backgrounds.
If something is bothering me, I let it build up until I shut down and then explode. He liked to talk about things. When I noticed my lack of communication was affecting him, I didn't want to hurt him, so I had to learn how to not shut down and remain open.
When I am sick, I just want to be alone, but when he is sick, he is really clingy. I have to remember to comfort my partner the way he wants, not the way I would want to be comforted.
He makes me laugh and everything seems easier.
Sometimes my wife catches herself and says, "I'm not fighting fair right now," so we take some time apart to calm down.
Sometimes I pray.
I never doubt that she loves me and thinks I'm adorable and beautiful, knowing that means everything else can roll off my back.
The last question. Do you have any advice for other couples?
Be kind.
My independence and own identity are important. It's good to have my own friends and do my own things sometimes, so I appreciate our shared things more.
My first marriage failed because we were two different people with different friends, and he traveled all the time. In my second marriage, we have common friends and do things together that we like, but have time apart too. We've been married for 25 years.
I see so many couples split up with the first fight. Disagreements are common. Learn to get past it. It will blow over. The next week, we will be very loving with each other.
It's not always sunshine and roses, but it is worth the work.
Make each other feel appreciated.
Remember forgiveness.
If you are grumpy and arguing, just strap the feed bags on. Everything is better on a full stomach.
Remember that we are good together.
When traveling, remember not to leave each other at the rest area.
Thank you. Wonderful music. There's so much humor and insight in these couples' voices that we just heard. And for many couples that I interviewed, marriage is a symbol for what was already authentic in that relationship. For example, the couple who said, "We already knew we were going to spend our lives together." Or the person who said, "I knew she was the love of my life when I looked into her eyes." These couples' decision to spend their lives together was a private and very personal choice. And that authentic knowing applies to my marriage with Scott, where we knew really early on that we wanted to spend our lives together through all the ups and downs. And those fairy tale books don't tell us about those downs, do they? They don't tell us that marriage is work, that it's negotiating and compromising. I'm married to a wonderful man. And because of that, many people assume that they know my sexual identity. Yet I identify as bisexual, not heterosexual. And I've experienced discrimination around this. From the straight community, I've heard, "Oh, he fixed you, right?" Or "You're done with that now, right?" And from the LGBTQI community. I've also heard comments such as, oh, you were just dabbling in that before. Or, you're not one of us anymore now that you're married to a man. The good thing is here at UUCDC, I've never experienced any of that. Here I experience love and unconditional acceptance. And here we feel safe being who we are, in whatever shape or form that may be. When we first talked about wedding, we debated about whether it was even okay to get married when so many of our friends were denied that right. And now that we are married, in a way, I can pass in society as a straight couple. And that feels awkward to me in many ways. The word marriage carries a very public authority. Marriage is a cultural and religious institution, and it's a civil bond with legal status. The couple who said marriage was a public act to applaud our relationship demonstrates the cultural institution of marriage. And the couple who said marriage was a practical option to get legal protections talks about marriage as a legal status. So some facts. According to federal law, married couples have over 1,000 federal rights not given to single people, including access to Social Security, pension benefits, and immunity from testifying against their partner in court. Yet this very basic legal status is denied to so many. People often ask me, well, what about civil unions? You have civil unions. Civil unions only protect couples at the state law level, and they don't even give the same state protection as given to married people. And they completely omit federal protections. Civil unions are a separate and unequal status. Does that sound familiar? I've heard that before. A real and powerful inequity. And one of the couples I talked with have a civil union, and they take their certificate with them whenever they travel, because they worry that if one of them gets hospitalized, without that certificate, the other one would not be allowed to see their partner or help with medical decisions. And even then, they have experienced medical staff ignoring the authority of their civil union and denying them access to their partner. Is marriage equality an urgent issue? My response is that fighting for civil rights always is urgent. I don't have to carry around my marriage certificate to get access to my husband when he's in the hospital. And as a person who is privileged with the legal rights of marriage, I feel I must lend my voice in support of marriage equality until access to these legal rights are given regardless of sexual orientation. Now, it's a really exciting time in our country. As of this week, I think, I'm trying to keep up with the stats, they're changing all the time, but I think as of this week, 18 states and Washington, D.C. have legal same-sex marriage, including Michigan, and several states recognize same-sex marriages from out of state. That's exciting, but there's at least 28 states that still have same-sex marriage bans. But that's changing weekly. There's just this momentum right now. But here in Pennsylvania, we live in the only state in the Northeast that does not allow same-sex couples to marry. We're surrounded by states that allow that. There are several ongoing court cases challenging this ban from different angles, and we've had several officials taking stances on this issue, including Attorney General Kathleen Kane, who called Pennsylvania's gay marriage prohibition wholly unconstitutional. And then there was the wonderful Montgomery County Register of Wills and clerk for the Orphans Court, D. Bruce Haynes, who issued over 100 marriage licenses to same-sex couples, including some of my friends, before he was legally enjoined to stop. So there are actually over 100 couples, same-sex couples, married in Pennsylvania. And there are many organizations lobbying for change, such as the ACLU and Equity Pennsylvania, who Jean pointed out is having a meeting here on March 29th. Now, American history has told this story before. There once was a time where there was restrictions on interracial marriage. And that ended in 1967. In that ruling, the Supreme Court said that marriage is one of the basic civil rights. Changes. They are a-comin'. And sometimes big changes can start with those simple conversations. Yesterday, in that beautiful weather, what did I do? I did what I usually do in that kind of weather. I go out to garden and I start shooting the breeze with my neighbors. And we were just kind of asking about each other's day and what we're going to do the next day. And I told them about this service. And we ended up having this hour-long chat about the struggles of marriage and the topic of same-sex marriage. And a lot of my stereotypes were smashed because my seemingly conservative Catholic neighbor actually believes in same-sex marriage. And by having this simple conversation, it just enabled people to talk about it. I came to it with a sense of curiosity and non-judgmentalness. I left my soapbox at home that day and just listened and shared. I had a similar conversation with my conservative Christian family members at a family picnic. And I watched my mom cringing in the corner as, of course, we started talking about all those hot-button issues like religion and politics. And in the past, I would have been that person on the soapbox, and I would have been annoyed and frustrated with them. But just this time, I just decided, let me have a conversation. Let me just listen to what they have to say and what I have to say. And they actually learned something. They learned about the legal rights that are denied, which they did not know about. Now, I don't think I changed their minds on this. But I do know that they now have a new respect for my views and my passion for this issue, and I put a sense of humanity onto this issue for them. There is hope. We ourselves can speak and be heard. We can advocate that civil marriage is a civil right. And let's bring that day of marriage equality for all one step closer.